Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. I'm deeply grateful for that. Home thoughts. I've slowed down the pace of my reread of The Catcher in the Rye because I'm enjoying it so much. Really is remarkably good. One person can make a difference and everyone should try. John F. Kennedy via Nicholas Burns. And then I like this story on Bloomberg View, the weirdest star, sometime around 737 AD in the luminous constellation Cygnus, in the vicinity of a star known as KIC 8462852, something very strange happened. Here on Earth, 1,280 light years away, the mystery has only deepened as scientists have watched it unfold. The star in question is very odd indeed. Every once in a while, the light it emits dims perceptibly, sometimes by an astonishing amount. Ordinarily, such dimming might suggest a passing planet. In this case, the sheer magnitude of the dip and its irregular pattern would seem to rule out anything so mundane. One of the biggest mysteries in astronomy. Plenty of explanations for this nebular oddity have been mooted: an eccentric mass of comets, vast dust clouds, maybe a huge planet with a ring system surrounded by a swarm of Trojan objects. None are quite satisfactory. Another theory, perhaps you've heard, is that it's the work of an alien civilization. The idea is that an advanced race of extraterrestrials might be using technology, very large technology, to capture energy from the star. There's a thought. I like this photograph of a pavilion house offering spectacular views over India's Western Ghats Mountains. Not sure where that is. Political reflections. Merkel moves on. This is from Holger. And indeed, she seems to be doing so. Here's a photograph of Emmanuel Macron meeting with Vladimir Putin at Versailles. Very grand Versailles. I went there many years ago, 1990s. Emmanuel Macron, in my view, has been a phenomenal and remarkable arrival on the world stage. A geopolitical sorcerer, and his arrival on the global scene has been seriously impactful. Have a look at this video if you haven't seen it already, of how the French President Emmanuel Macron bypassed Trump to greet new leader of the free world, Germany's Angela Merkel. So I think he's been seriously impactful. I'm very impressed all round, I must say, and I think he bears watching. They are like dairy cows. They will be milked, and when they are out of milk, they will be slaughtered. Ali Khamenei. When it comes to beheadings, ISIS has nothing over Saudi Arabia, says Newsweek. In fact, since January, 59 people have had their heads lopped off in the kingdom, where punishment by the sword has been practiced for centuries. 2 policemen were wounded when a bomb exploded in Awamia in eastern Saudi Arabia. That's become much more restive in the last few weeks. And in fact, I think Trump's visit was a green light for further repressive measures in Saudi Arabia, Bahrain. You're seeing plenty of that at the moment. 2 policemen were wounded when a bomb exploded in Awamia in eastern Saudi Arabia, where many of the country's Shiite Muslim minority live. Monday's attack was the second in 2 weeks, targeting security forces deployed to guard workers busy razing the old part of the town. The Saudis love doing that, razing things, even in Mecca. Known as Al-Musawwara, which authorities say has been used by armed fugitives to escape arrest. This was an interesting article, and I've been thinking about it. Is Trump deliberately having ISIS relatives killed? Over the course of the past week, US warplanes have repeatedly targeted the town of Mayadeen. in the ISIS-held part of Syria. The casualties have been overwhelmingly civilian in nature, and many reports suggest those civilians were mostly relatives of ISIS fighters. And I think it might explain Manchester. Theresa May battles against complacency as UK election lead slips away. Now, goodness. I was so confident she was going to win an enormous landslide a couple of weeks ago. Gone is the confidence when she stunned Britain by calling a snap election on April 18. On the day of the announcement, an ICN Guardian poll gave May's Tories a lead over Labour of 21 points, and surveys in the following weekend's newspapers supported leads of 24 and 25 points. Now she's vulnerable to attack. Interviewer Jeremy Paxman quizzed May about her U-turns in an interview on Sky News on Monday. You have backed down over social care, over national insurance. It was in Brussels, I would think you're a blowhard who collapses at the first sign of gunfire. Her rival, on the other hand, has grown more relaxed, holding his own against the same interviewer, who has a reputation for being a Rottweiler in his style of questioning. In one instance, Corbyn won a big round of applause when asked about whether he'd want to abolish the monarchy. Do you know what? I had a very nice chat with the Queen. After a break of 3 days, Corbyn delivered a speech in which he suggested that the UK's involvement in foreign wars had made the country a target for jihadists. May hit back, accusing the Labour leader of blaming Britain for bringing terrorism upon itself. This is an important point he's made, and I think he's timed it really well, because for a long time there's been so much denial about this connection. And I think what I'm seeing in particular is a very positive response and a better understanding that there is a correlation and it's not deniable. May, who began the campaign cautioning voters that polls had been wrong before in 2015 and at the Brexit referendum, was flying from a NATO meeting in Brussels to the Group of Seven summit in Sicily when a poll in the Times newspaper dropped. It put Labour on 38% to the Conservatives 43%, the tightest gap since May became Prime Minister last July. And where he's making headway is this: Labour doubles poll lead over Conservatives among voters under 25. The big point is, will they vote? But that's really interesting. Manuel Noriega is dead. Panama's former strongman dies in hospital aged 83. You will recall he had a very pockmarked face. Have a look at this photograph from the Telegraph. Manuel Noriega dead. Panama's former strongman dies in hospital. Curtis Shin tweeted, number of humans killed by 2015. Shark, 6. Elephant, 100. Scorpion, 3,500. Snake, 60,000. Humans, 580,000. Mosquitoes, 830,000. If you're interested, there are plenty of elections coming up in Africa. This is a visual guide to African countries with elections in 2017 via Brookings. Let's move on to the currency markets. Interesting, euro was being sold early in the morning, and it's now making a bit of a snapback at 111.35. Dollar index 97.71. Japanese yen 110.90, Swiss franc 0.9804, the pound 128.37, that's another big rebound. The Australian dollar, where is that? 0.7432, India rupee 64.685, South Korean won 1123.98. These emerging market currencies have really behaved well, except when you get a massive political blowout. Look at Brazil and look at South Africa, for example. The Egyptian pound 18.1215, South African rand is around 13, the figure. Dollar index, look, I still think we're going to 93.50, but we will get a rate hike this month out of the Fed, so that might strengthen the dollar a little bit. But the key pivot remains that one I was talking about, which is above us at 99.50, and I think we're targeting 93.50. That's the way I see it. Euro versus the dollar, this is a chart from Holger. We've had a very strong little bounce here to 111.32, having got down to about 111.10. And I think the issue here for me is Mario Draghi, who was a real pussycat. Put up a photograph over. And I think that's what slightly tapered what was a very bullish move that was happening in the euro. Italian stocks fell after comments from the former Prime Minister Matteo Renzi sparks concern over early election. He's talking about having an election at the same time as the Germans are having theirs. Gold, where are we with gold? That's at 1267.34, but we are actually in no man's land. We've got 1250 down there, and we've got a hurdle 1300, otherwise we're stuck, and it's difficult to judge which way this goes. Crude oil, let's take a look at that. We're now at $49.80 in New York. I think it's going lower, but I've been thinking that for a while. Net foreign assets at the central bank shrank to 492.9 billion in April, reaching their lowest since 2011. Bear in mind also that they're going to spend about 110 of that on arms. The government has been drawing down the assets, which hit a record high of 737 billion in August 2014, to cover a huge budget deficit caused by cheap oil. It has also coped with the deficit by borrowing abroad. Last month it raised $9 billion with an international issue of Islamic bonds. Net foreign assets at the central bank shrank by $8.5 billion from the previous month, reaching their lowest level since 2011. And I wrote about this a few weeks ago when I said reserves have been depleted from Abuja to Riyadh, from Luanda to Caracas, and in all the oil-producing capitals in the world. So many capitals, I wrote, are fiddling while sitting on a tinderbox and playing with matches. Classic one is the Deputy Crown Prince, who was quoted in Al Arabiya when he was being asked about Iran. How can I communicate with them while they prepare for the arrival of Al-Mahdi al-Muntazar? And I said, this is deluded thinking at a time when things could seriously fall apart. That took me to one of my favorite poems. W.B. Yeats is the second coming, turning and turning in the widening gyre. The falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dim tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. Fantastic poem. Teflon Turkey, CDS on Turkey drops to the lowest in 2 years. That's from Holger. This is another point. There's been a tremendous appetite for emerging market risk, way outweighing the political risks. That's a good example. The UN has lowered India GDP's growth forecast to 7.3% this year, but predicted a higher 7.9% for 2018, even as it cautioned about bad loans plaguing the banking sector. Cyclone kills almost 200 in Sri Lanka, hits Bangladesh. Global warming for you. Sub-Saharan Africa, over the weekend I said, the bull market in Nairobi and in other parts of Africa was externally generated and at a macro level. You see it in Nairobi, which is in a bull market. You see it in South Africa's rand trading a great deal more robustly. You see it in Sub-Saharan Africa's sovereign bond, Eurobond yields, which have rallied sharply. And the government of Kenya, in my opinion, should swoop on this opportunity to sell some debt, in fact. Morocco has arrested the leader of the northern protest movement that has shaken the country's northern Rift region for months. Let's see how that goes. Tanzania's Zanzibar banned street food vendors and amid cholera outbreak, and we've seen a cholera outbreak here, Zanzibar, South Sudan, and it's because of the rain and the lack of proper sewage evacuation. What happens is the rain comes and it gets mixed up with the sewage, which then all rises to the surface, which is not what I learnt all about because I did some work with the Ministry of Health at one point about this time of year. Ivory Coast to issue $1 billion of Eurobond next month. They need to. There's a big shortfall in the budget. South Africa's ruling party backs Zuma after calls for him to quit. I told you. There was a call made in the NAC for the President to consider stepping down as President of the Republic, ANC Secretary General Mantashe told a news conference. Mantashe said the calls for Zuma to step down are not so much about removing the president, but rather dislodging the ANC itself from power. Another bunch of deluded folks. South African all shares up 6.5% this year. Dollar versus Rand. I think the Rand got ahead of the Zuma exit curve. What do I mean by that? He's not going easily. And the Rand was assuming he was gone this week. Egypt transfers Minya security chief after attack on Christians. What's interesting is the target has been in Libya. Those folks in Libya that are being currently targeted are also sponsored by Qatar and Saudi Arabia. And if you listen to what Sisi said, which I happened to, at that Saudi Riyadh summit, he made some very strong and forthright remarks about this. Egyptian pound is at 18.1165. Also from my article over the weekend, I said actually and interestingly a number of African markets have entered bull market territory. And even Nigeria is on the cusp. Nigerian all shares up 8.15% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index up 13.9% this year. I like this photograph of Rwanda by David Yarrow. Take a look at this. This is Acacia Mining. Look at their share price. This is all about the spat with the president. Already the minister has lost his position. DR Congo is tackling a new Ebola outbreak with an experimental vaccine. And the thing about things like Ebola is that they can attain escape velocity very easily. Viruses exhibit non-linear and exponential characteristics. Kenya's central bank held its main lending rate at 10%. Foreign exchange reserves, they said, are at all-time high levels, currently at 8.23 billion, 5.4 months of import cover. It's largely a story of food inflation, which hopefully is now easing off. But if you strip out food inflation from the inflationary basket, the deputy governor of the central bank told me inflation was running at around 2.5%. So I think this was the right decision and one I expected. Drone photography captures the dramatic inequality of Nairobi. This is from Quartz. Look at this, a highway next to Kibera, and this rehabilitated roads next to Kibera as well. Both photographs from the Thomson Reuters Foundation. The maximum price of the highest grade of Kenyan tea rose to $3.92 per kilogram at auction last week. That's up 22.5% from a year ago. Just remember that. We've had a drought, prices have gone up. Output in top tea shipper Kenya dropped by over a third from a year ago in the first quarter after drought ravaged parts of the country. Production was down over 16% during that period in India. Interesting. By the way, the Nairobi all share, which was, as of the weekend, up 10.3% in 2017, it's actually corrected 1% yesterday, off a 9-month high, entered a bull market last week, having rallied about 22.71% since its March 9 low. The Nairobi all share corrected 1%, so it's up 9.187% so far this year. My piece was about the bull market. According to the popular definition, a bull market begins when a stock, commodity or index rises 20% from a low. Both the Nairobi all share and the NSE 20 have done that. I said the next leg of this bull market will be driven by local institutions who will need to chase returns. Local institutions have carried an overweight position in bonds. Returns of 12.5% looked outstanding when compared to the stock market, which was posting negative returns. However, just take Safaricom, which is up 13.577% year to date. There is no bond that is going to get close to that on an annualized basis. So the next leg of this bull market will be driven by local institutions who will need to chase returns. And it's a little bit of a slow process because they have to go to their trustees, discuss it with them, come back, write a few memos. So, it's going to be a positive tailwind for the market. East Africa's largest banks all posted a drop in first quarter earnings as the government imposed cap on commercial lending rates, curbed the amount they can charge for loans. Interesting article in Bloomberg, very interesting charts. But they only took the chart analysis up to the end of March. End of March to today, that's when all the banks came back in a big way. As I said, the banks after a big wobble have come back with a bang. KCB up over 30%, Stanchart up 10% year-to-date. Stanchart was the only share that in that downdraft held its own, so that's an interesting point, low beta. Equity up 26.66%, that was before this week's trading. I said the rally has been broad-based and has gathered momentum. A lot of folks, particularly in the banking stocks, are chasing dividends, in many cases double-digit ones. So we will surely walk into a correction. We might have walked into it yesterday in these shares when the dividends are paid. Co-op Bank has revealed £1 billion is locked up in Chase and Imperial Bank. The share price reacted badly yesterday, down 6.85%, but it still remains up 23.48% this year. The link to the fundamental share price data is there. Safaricom, which as of the weekend was up 13.577%, eased back 1.15% off a 2017 high yesterday. It's worth about 861 billion. That's about 44 to 45% of the overall stock market value, and therefore, if it's firm, the stock market is firm. Apparently, according to Quartz Africa, Safaricom is looking to be able to focus more on a Pan-African strategy since Vodafone's announcement last week that it had transferred a 35% stake in Safaricom to its South African subsidiary Vodacom. Kengen is now up 34.48% year to date. Take a look at that. That's done extremely well. You remember I was saying about an 8 target with just 20 cents off that. Britam is up 25% year-to-date. Britam typically has an overweight position in the equity markets, and I think part of that recent response is to do with that. Sasini Tea and Coffee reported a sharp slide in first half earnings per share, 60% down. Share price is up 45.45% year-to-date. Revenue down 8.416%. Net profit for the year down 60.868%, EPS down 60%. Obviously, the drought impacted volumes by more than the tea price increased. Kenya Airways, that's up 17.94% this year. Take a look at an interview I did with Michael Joseph, the chairman, after the earnings result. Take a look at the earnings presentation that I attended at the Crown Plaza. We also have a video for that. Nairobi NSE 20 is up 7.908% year to date. There was a drive down to Mombasa on the SGR, Shiko Mombasa, Syokimau Terminus Nairobi, 2 p.m. departure, got to Mombasa at 7 p.m. in the Terminus Miritini. John Aglenby, who was also on the trip, some of the dozens of elephants we've seen from the SGR in Sava. Look, it's a big deal. It's the biggest single investment that Kenya Inc. has ever made in its post-independence history. I think the concerns are that it was expensive per kilometer. If you compare it with Ethiopia and with Morocco, that's a fact. But I think people are underestimating the positive economic spillover effects that are going to come from it actually being in play. Once again, thank you for stopping by.